Hey guys, welcome back to releasethecraftin. Priscilla here with another episode of Storycraft, and I think you guys are going to love the story I have for you today. I am very excited to share it with you guys. Right up top though, I started a Patreon, and I'm pretty excited about it. I'm on an emotional high right now, and I wanted to share that with you guys. Also wanted to say a shout out, huge thanks to the people who have already supported me there. You guys are amazing. You're beautiful, lovely, wonderful people, and I am so excited to share stuff with you guys there. I have so many plans. I got plans on plans, and I'm just super hyped about it right now, so I wanted to share it. I wanted to bring it up. If you haven't heard about it already, please give it a check out. At least look. You don't have to touch, but you could look. Please. Please. And same, self-promotional aspects aside, the story today is one that I have stumbled across in my search for particular stories along the theme of the month. If you haven't guessed, the theme of stories this month was Pride. I did a bunch of Pride stories, so we're wrapping up my Pride theme month with another Pride story. And this one I think is interesting. I have a lot of thoughts I want to share with you guys at the end, but I'm telling you guys the story today of Florinda. And this story comes to us from Chile, and if you ask Google how to pronounce Chile because you aren't sure and a little bit self-conscious, Google will tell you the American pronunciation, which is the exact pronunciation you know in your heart of hearts is wrong, and we're trying to tell your brain was not the correct pronunciation, but then Google will gaslight you and tell you it's the correct one. Just look up the video. It's like 20 seconds. The guy tells you how they say it in South America, and also how they say it in the U.S. And when you hear them both together, your brain will be like, oh yeah, the U.S. version is entirely incorrect. Chile is how you say it. So that's the little thought journey I went on, because I knew it was Chile, and then I was like, but is it? What if you're wrong and you're making it accented for no reason? And so I gaslit myself, and then I let Google gaslight me. And honestly, you guys, it's just been a very gaslighty evening when all I wanted to do was tell you guys a story. And yeah, that I would just share that emotional turmoil, tumultuous journey that I just went on to figure out the pronunciation of the one word I'm not going to bring up again because it's not relevant to the story. At any rate, I also want to apologize in advance, but it's like a sorry, not sorry kind of thing, because I am sitting directly in front of my fan, because I live in the state of Texas, and right now it's 108 degrees, and my air conditioning is old and lousy, so it's hot in my house. I am hot, and so I'm seated literally 2 feet away from my fan, so you're going to hear that a lot in the background. Apologies, but I'm not moving, so we're just going to go with it. We're going to roll with it. We're just going to focus on the story today. So, the story of Florinda begins like all great stories do in the way, way long ago. Florinda was born to a wealthy man and his wife, and they loved her very dearly. They were very excited to have her. Her father was so excited that he bought her a fancy crucifix to hang above her crib, because, of all the things that, babies want, it's fancy crucifixes. That's the number one thing that babies ask for. At any rate, she always had that crucifix in her room. The crucifixes are irrelevant. That's why I keep saying it. It will come back into play later. But yeah, she always had this crucifix with her. It was a treasured gift from her father. So, you might be like, well, this all sounds great. Baby, crucifix, happy couple. What could possibly go wrong here? Well, I'm going to tell you what went wrong. Florinda's mother, as most fairy tale mothers do, fell ill and then died when Florinda was a young child, probably in her early 10s. Let's say her early 10s. There's no specific age. It just says her mother died when she was young. I'm going to say she was somewhere in the 8 to 12-year-old range when this happened. And this was very unfortunate. It was very sad. Florinda loved her mother very deeply, so this was a huge pain, and her father also loved his wife very deeply and was going through his own pain and dealt with his pain so maturely that he immediately promptly set out on a journey to go find himself a new wife, because how is he supposed to raise a child all by himself? He buys crosses for babies as gifts. So, he left to go find a new wife. Florinda was kind of left to her own devices, being taken care of by like the housekeepers, the maids, the local gardener, the people who were maintaining her father's estate. They basically raised her, and because she was the lady of the estate when her father was gone, um, she was kind of low-key in charge, so they didn't really raise her so much as they made sure she didn't die, and then, they would show her whatever she asked, which led to her being a very inquisitive child with lots of freedom, who would often ask for them to teach her things that most little girl children don't learn how to do. Things like how to shoot and how to ride horses, and, genuinely things that might be a little bit more reserved for boys, she learned. But she also had a very distinct interest in things that were for little girls. So she learned how to sew and cook and do all the lady things too. She just learned whatever the heck she felt like, so that she was a very well-rounded individual with lots of skills. This is also important. So basically, this carries on for several years while her father is out searching for a new wife, because how could he possibly raise a child without a wife? He doesn't know. And he does this for so long that in the time that he's gone, he kind of starts to lose grip with reality, because the problem that he's having when he's out there, like, hunting for a new wifey is none of them are living up to his standard, and his standard being his previous wife. And as he's going through all these women and interviewing them and doing whatever they used to do in old-timey days to make a match, he's like, nah, you won't do. No, you're not good. You're actually kind of ugly. You're a little bit awful, and I don't know why. The I don't know why part is you're not my wife, but in like subtlety subtext, I don't know, it wasn't very subtle. But because none of these women are living up to his standard, it gets to the point where Florinda's dad starts to get very frustrated and a little bit mad. And I don't mean mad as in angry, I mean like mad as a hatter kind of mad. So much so that he finally settles on a solution to his wife problem and heads home to tell his kid about it. And when he gets there, he is greeted with the young woman, now fully grown young woman, who is his child, known as Florinda. And he's like, wow, you are so beautiful. You are as beautiful, if not prettier, than your mother. And she's like, wow, thanks. That's a really nice, genuine compliment to get from my father I have not seen in a very long time, since he's been out gallivanting since my mother died. And he's like, yes, I know. I was trying to find a mother for you. And she's like, I would have just been okay with my father, but sure. And he's like, yeah. You just look really nice when you talk and stuff. At which point Florinda's like, are you okay? Like, what does that mean? And he's like, I have found a new wife. In fact, you won't even believe this. This is such great news for the two of us, because I have found the perfect woman, the perfect replacement for your mother. And I am so confident in this decision that we're going to be married tomorrow. I've already set everything up. I set it all up on the way back home. So it's going to happen. And she's like, wow, that's really fast. Who, pray tell, is this magical, mystical woman you are so dead set on? And he's like, well, the only woman who could be more beautiful than your mother is you, of course, silly head. At which point, Florinda is horrified. This is now a horror story. And she's like, I'm sorry, what? And he's like, you and I will get married, because no other woman will surpass your mother but you. So you are the best person for this. And she's like, I thought you wanted to find me a mother. And he's like, yeah, well, clearly you're too old to have a mom now. Like, you have to get married, obviously, or you're just going to, like, shrivel up. Like, all your little eggs are going to shrivel up into your uterus and you're going to die. So this is a much better use of your time, my time, our lives. We're going to be very happy together, and it's all going to happen tomorrow. I've already set it up. So, go get ready, do whatever girls do to get ready for a wedding, because we're getting married, sweetie. That's the way this goes. And Florinda, in her shock and horror, decides to politely excuse herself from the conversation, go up to her room, and lay down in dread her unfortunate luck. I'm just kidding. She doesn't do that at all. She actually packs up a bag. She packs up her crucifix too, which is an interesting move, but she takes that with her, and she disappears in the fucking night, because Florinda's not hanging around to get married to her father. So, what does she do next? She goes to see her grandma, because if anyone is reasonable in a time of crisis, it's your grandma. And she tells her grandmother everything that happened, all the things that her father said, and the grandma's like, wow, yeah, my son seems to have lost his ever-loving mind. What do you want to do? At which point Florinda's like, what do I want to do? I thought you had a solution. And grandma's like, nope, I got no solution here. I don't see a way out for you. But I am very sympathetic. This sounds awful. I guess my only suggestion would be you could go find one of the young men in town to marry you. You are very beautiful. And if they married you before you got married to your father, then that would be your way out. And Florinda's like, that's a horrible solution. I don't want to be married. I want to keep being free. In fact, I think I have a better solution. At which point, she puts her head together with her grandma. They chat out the details, and by the morning, a young man leaves her grandmother's house. That's right, Florinda has had a huge makeover in the middle of the night and is now a man. So she had her grandmother change her hair, help her get a disguise. Her grandmother went the extra step by getting her all of the old clothes that her father wore. So she had a bag full of men's clothes now and was going to live out the rest of her days as a man. Because in the old times, who had more freedom than men? So Florinda, deciding that she wants to sort of check on the situation before she gets too far away from her father's home, heads back to her father's estate, steals a horse, because remember, she's got all those skills. She probably wasn't planning to apply them to, like, horse thievery, but she did. So she steals a horse, and while she's there stealing the horse, she overhears some of the, like, help around the house talking about how the lady of the house has run away in the night and her father is out searching for her. So again, the lord of the manor is not at home because he's out searching for a woman. This time it's his daughter, but understandably, it's his daughter who ran away from him. So Florinda continues on. She was like, okay, fuck this place. I'm out of here. She gets out, like, you know, she gets on the horse, she gets on the road, she starts riding away. And she decides to head towards the capital to see if she can find some place to, like, start up a new life in, you know, the major city. And on the road, who does she happen to run into but her father? And her father's like, I'm sorry, sir, have you seen anyone, like a young woman riding around on a horse that kind of looks like the horse that you have? But, like, I know that all horses look the same, so that couldn't possibly be my horse, but I'm pretty sure she's on a horse that looks very similar to yours. Have you seen her? And Florinda's like, no, dog. And he's like, oh, okay. Well, thank you for your help, young man, and takes off. At which point, Florinda knows that her grandmother is the master of disguise because her own father didn't even recognize her. So Florinda continues on their way until they get to the capital city. And when they get there, they make their way up to the king's palace and ask to buy some broth because she has clothes and she has a crucifix, but she has no money. So she's like, I got maybe a couple pennies. Like, can you help me? And, well, like, the palace staff are sort of bartering and trying to exchange some sort of way for Florinda to get a little bit of broth so she can get a little bit of food. The king walks by, sees this young man bartering for food, and is absolutely awestruck by how handsome the young man is. And again, we have another story of a king who's super in love with the male character and decides that the only solution is for this super handsome young man to marry his daughter because he can't marry him, but his daughter can. So the king sees the handsome young man, goes up to him and says, you don't have to barter for food here, sir. In fact, you're so handsome, you can come have dinner with me. And while we're having dinner, I'm going to introduce you to my daughter, who I'm going to then have you marry because you're so freaking good looking. You have to marry my daughter. There's no other way. You have to be with her. At which point, Florinda's like, I don't have a solution or a way out of this one. So Florinda just decides to go along with it. And, they have dinner with the king. They spend the night. And then the next day they are married to the king's daughter. And on their wedding night, after the entire feast, the whole ceremony has gone by. On their wedding night, Florinda turns to the princess and is like, "Hey, I have a secret to tell you." And the princess is like, "I love secrets. Please tell me." And Florinda's like, "I spent the first half of my life as a woman, and I'm only wearing men's clothes." At which point, the princess is like, "That's perfect. In fact, I can't think of anything better than the things that you just said to me right now. We're just going to live our life together." And in a direct quote, she says, "We'll simply share our life like two doves," which is beautiful. And Florinda is a little bit shook, but agrees and says, "We can continue to live together as happily as doves if you keep the secret of my sex a secret." And the princess is like, "No problem. It's on lock. I'm not telling a single soul. This is going to be great for the both of us." And I can only imagine the princess was super relieved because, like, within a day, her dad just married her to some random strange dude he found on the street because they were attractive. And she's, like, sitting there being like, "Oh my God, like, this guy could be anybody. This guy could be a killer. What the hell?" And then all of a sudden, it's like, "Oh, no, I'm not actually a killer. I'm a lady." What a fucking relief. I imagine she was really chill. And for a while, things go on pretty well. They get along really well, the princess and Florinda. And everything seems to be, like cooking with Crisco. It's just moving along very smoothly. Except that the princess has a godfather. And the godfather happens to be a king of another kingdom. So he hadn't actually been present for the wedding because it was a freaking shotgun wedding. And he didn't have time to get there in time for it. So he's like preparing a bunch of gifts because as the princess's godfather, he loves the heck out of her. And he wants to spoil her with all these wedding presents. And he's getting them all together. But the godfather has a soothsayer, a fortune teller on his payroll. And the fortune teller is like, "Your goddaughter married a lady." At which point the godfather is like, "I'm sorry, what? A lady?" So he gets all the gifts, puts them in his little carriage, rides all the way to the other kingdom, and then goes and tells the king, the princess's dad, that his new son-in-law is actually a lady. And the king is like, "Oh, Have you seen him? Do you see how good he looks? Look at how handsome he is. There's no way that's a woman. You're out of your mind. I wouldn't be so attracted to him if it was a woman." I mean, you know what I mean, sir. At which point the godfather's like, "No, I swear it's the truth. And if you don't believe me, we'll turn it into a wager." So the king is like, "Okay, tell me what you got." So he says, "We'll test him with 3 tests to prove that your son-in-law is actually a woman. And whoever loses the bet has to give up his kingdom. So if your son-in-law is a woman, I get your kingdom. If your son-in-law is a man, you can have mine." And the king is like, "Okay, stupid. You're about to lose this bet and your kingdom for no reason? Like, what?" Because this is clearly a man. I know, because they're attractive. And so Florinda, when they bring this whole wager to them, is like, great. There's no way out of this, like, bet of kings. Like, how am I going to escape this? And so after some fretting and some discussion with their wife, Florinda's like, "Okay, fine. I will do your stupid freaking test. Like, I don't know what else to do." And the princess is like, "You have to, because they're going to kill you probably if you say no." And Florinda's like, "Great, cool. Yeah, what's the first test?" And they're like, "Okay, we're going to get a bunch of pigeons together. We want you to shoot them, because only men can shoot." And Florinda's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's actually I can do that. I have that skill. I know how to do that. My house staff showed me." So Florinda proceeds to shoot a bunch of pigeons, because the skill that only men can do. Women have never shot pigeons ever. Even to this day, you guys, they've never shot pigeons. So, first test, passed flying colors. They're like, see, and then the king is like, see, stupid, clearly a man. And the godfather is like, actually, there's 2 more tests, so that's not the final answer. And he goes, okay, but for test number 2, we get to watch you bathe in the river. And Florinda's like, that's not a test. That's you being a peeping Tom. Like, that, what? That's perverted. And the king's like, oh, that is a violation of his privacy. Like, that's weird, but I guess it is the most straightforward way to figure it out. And so Florinda tells their wife, like, what the next test is. The wife immediately, our little princess, who's, like, super down with Florinda being a lady, immediately falls ill, because that's super helpful. And she's like, oh my god, my wife is gonna die, and if she doesn't die, we're gonna both be executed for lying about their gender. So Florinda's like, I don't know what else to do, so she decides to, like, take a running leap into the water before the kings can get, like, a good look at all of their bits and pieces. And she proceeds to do her bathing like normal, while trying to, like, avoid the gaze of these 2 kings who are just watching a young man, or what they perceive to be a young man, like, bathing in the water. And Florinda knows that they have to come out of the water at some point, so begrudgingly starts to rise up out of the water, just when the childhood crucifix that she had been carrying with her this entire time, her trusty crucifix that her father had gifted her, comes flying out of their bag and flies across the water. So as soon as Florinda stands up, they're revealed to be a man. The crucifix turned Florinda into a man, and Florinda put their clothes back on, rode back to the palace, told their wife, who immediately recovered from their illness, which, like, girl, it's anxiety. You have anxiety. Maybe deal with that a little bit. Like, get some therapy, because if you fall ill immediately every time you're stressed, like, that's not helpful. You're gonna be a princess. Like, you're gonna be queen one day. Therapy, babe, therapy. And the second king, the godfather, is furious, because remember, they put their entire kingdom on the line for this stupid freaking bet. So the godfather rides all the way back to their kingdom, to then argue with their fortune teller, because he's like, why would you tell me that she was a woman if he was a man? And the fortune teller is like, well, she was, but I can't predict what the Lord is going to do. And that's the end of the story. Presumably, Florinda and his wife live happily ever after, and everything is fine for them forever and ever, and the godfather loses his kingdom, and things just sort of move on. Happy as normal. And it's sort of a weird little story. There's not, like, a huge action-y conclusion here. But I thought it was a really interesting story, mostly because I found this blog, and I will link it below, but there was sort of a discussion on, like, the messages behind this story, because it's not the most straightforward story. Like, there are fairy tales of women who dress as men and then become men, or vice versa, or things like, there's other stories where this happens. But in this story in particular, it seems like it only happens to sort of progress, like, a heteronormative ideal. Like, now the relationship is totally fine because it's straight. And at first, that's, like, sort of a strange thing. Like, I don't know if this is a great idea, or, like, a good narrative to tell. But on the other side of this story, the thing that's, like, really unique about it is that this is a story where, like, God actually takes a hand. Like, the Christian God takes a hand and sort of says, like, this fluidity and gender identity is okay. And God's like, you have a problem, I'm going to solve it. But, like, the fact that you chose to have this sort of change in your gender is totally fine and being legitimized by this miracle conducted by God. And I just thought it was something really interesting. You don't see, like, stories like this. So it's just kind of nice to have, like, one story that sort of confirms that, like, God is totally chill with this idea. At least in the context of this story. I know that there's people who are going to argue with me and flame me in the comments. That's fine. I don't care. But, like, the presence of the crucifix, and then the crucifix being the one to, like, take action to solve this, like, problem and help Florinda out and sort of confirm that, like, her relationship with the princess is totally cool and fine and they should be happy together, is, like, super forward, because the crucifix is such a major point in the story. It's, like, literally the first line of the fairy tale is how Florinda's dad got her this crucifix. So, like, it just really can't be argued away. But I really like it. I just like that aspect of the story. I really like the element behind that. There was even some discussion in the blog, but not, like, super in-depth, although there was, like, a link to it that I didn't really follow that much. But it was about how Chile has a history of gender-fluid shamans, specifically to the Mapuche people in Chile. And I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. I did not look that up. But that's something you could look up if you were trying to see some more information on there. But it seems like there's a history of that already in the country. And this fairy tale is just sort of reinforcing what's commonly known or understood to be a thing there. So it's just an interesting bit of, like, gender identity discussion behind a fairy tale. And I think that's really, really intriguing, really fun. I wish that there were more stories like this. I know that there's, like, a history of stories being scrubbed from the record, or, like, changed to sort of suit a heteronormative narrative, which is unfortunate, and a lot of that's been lost to time. But I like that we have this story at least to, like, keep that spirit alive, and that it's, like, supported by religion in this context. And I don't know, I think it's just a really interesting narrative. I liked Florinda's story. I like that Florinda, like, took her own agency and left when her dad was like, we're getting married. Like, Florinda just noped right on out there. And yeah, I guess that's all I have to say about it. I just thought it was something interesting, something fun I wanted to share with you, and I thought it was very appropriate for Pride Month to share this story. So that's gonna be it for me today, guys. If you made it to the end of the video, I appreciate your faces, and I will catch you guys all in the next one. Until then, happy crafting. Bye!